Shing shing. Kek TCG. Hello, my Keklings. You guys know, if you guys want to just watch the guide of this video, use the timestamps, skip to the guide. This part will be some advertisement / things I'm talking about. I do want to ask you all a favor. Please leave a like for this video and a comment for the algorithm. That one like and comment really gets the algorithm working so my videos can be seen. Before I dive into today's video, are you looking to coach players or are you looking to be coached? My Discord server has a section where you can advertise your coaching or just look for coaching. I want my Discord to be a place of improving at the game, and I find that finding good help is really difficult. And I wanted to make that a little easier on my Discord. If you are someone who is coaching, please join my Discord and message me to see how we can get that set up for you. I want to help you set up your coaching and also promote your growth. If you're someone just looking for additional help to improve your game, please message it there in the Discord as well. Today is a guide on the Blue Doflamingo. I have mained this deck longer than most players. I do have today with me Eric, who is a very good player who plays essentially everything. Eric has a lot of great accolades and a lot of great toppings in the past, and you know, this deck is kind of about like the extreme wide board of Jinbei and also the event of Pudding and the Raging Tiger. This guide is actually a promo for my Patreon where I do talk quite a lot about Blue Doflamingo in this video, but on the Patreon we have 75 minutes of going through the deck lists, all the side options, all the little tips that you want to find, navigating the early, mid, and ending games, and all of the relative matchups. In this guide, there's a lot of little tips kind of trickled through when we talk about individual matchups that kind of add up to helping you navigate the deck. And my biggest sponsor is my patrons. My Patreon is almost at $1,000 for the month. I am thinking about doing some awesome giveaway. I'm actually super excited, and I have one more OP07 guide in the bank where I will get that Red Purple Law guide out soon. In a month's time, I will try to update these decks or the decks that are going to be currently used after the August Treasure Cups. And I want to have a good idea going into Nationals what people should be practicing for. Join the Discord down in the description below. Thank you all for sitting through my advertisements, and without further ado, let's get into the goo. It's a great day here at Kekfilet's Patreon / YouTube promotion. I am the Kekfilet, and today I have with me Eric. How are you doing today, Eric?
Hey, how you doing? Doing pretty good. How about yourself?
I'm doing great. It is July 2nd. This week has been so busy with making guides. I feel like I fell behind a little bit, but now we are essentially catching back up with things. And I have with you today talking about Blue Doflamingo. Before we get into the video, I first want to just tell everybody that, or introduce Eric. You've probably seen him before if you've been to my videos, but Eric basically can play any deck. He has a lot of accolades, and he plays this game probably more than most people in general, right? And has a significant amount of tops from tournaments. So and he's really great to work with on these sort of guides. And I just want to at least introduce him a little bit with that. You can always follow him on Twitter, which will be in the description. And on top of that, he does have a Twitch, which he streams on virtually every day. So
yeah.
But with that, let's just actually jump right into the goo. Blue Doflamingo, and I'm probably going to add a little bit more input than I usually don't, because I usually don't put a lot of input. Why should people? Why would you like to play Blue Doflamingo or Blue in general, or why should people be playing Blue Doflamingo in this set?
The main reason is the new Jinbei card. Because like we've always had Blue Doflamingo in the game, but this new Jinbei card basically lets us cheat out 5 Dawn worth of character for just 1 with our leader effect, which is very strong. We already know how broken getting free Dawn is from Moria, like being able to put multiple bodies on board for cheap cost. And then this deck has a very good aggressive game plan that gives you incremental advantage because you're using the top of your deck to play cards
Mhm.
while doing massive amounts of damage as
Yeah.
you go throughout the game.
Yeah. It's
So
very
that'd be the main
effective
reason.
with that. I will say this deck very often wins board. If you really try,
Hmm.
you can win board state. But does that win the game all the time? Not exactly. You have to do some tricky things more in the end game. But if I was
Hmm.
to tell anybody why to play blue in general, well, you have access to both pudding and Raging Tiger and Jinbei. Those are the main
Yeah.
three reasons why we're playing blue in general, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
Now,
Two great disruptive threats and then a great advantage card.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, very destructive, great advantage card, and then what cards to go in between here? And obviously with Blue Doffy, it's an interesting thing. We will probably compare this deck to Boa Hancock Leader quite a bit in here, but that's a whole nother guide in general, which I may not even do a guide for Boa Hancock realistically.
Hmm.
Because it does have merits and it is actually not bad at all. I just think that in general, if you're gonna go all in on a strategy, the whole ass one thing, don't half ass two things, right? And
Yeah,
what
I
this
agree
deck
with that.
does is it goes wide. That's right. This deck can go wider than any other deck, but I will say a weakness of this deck that happens is actually the fact that you call cards in rested really sucks
Hmm.
because essentially they're just going to keep attacking your rested cards and never even deal you damage, and they'll just kind of out resource you if they're able to do that. So you do have to
Hmm.
play sometimes really tricky with your life and maybe even take a life or two, and then have a different kind of advantage against your opponent. I will say this deck is a little tricky to play depending on what you draw, but um,
I can see that. Well, the best way we mitigate that is like the cards we're playing that they're attacking aren't
mm,
from our hand, so they're from the top of our deck. So we never actually got to draw them. We just
mm,
got to play them on board. And then if those cards ever drew you a card, for example, Weevil or Four Jump Gecko Moria, the smaller one,
mm,
they added a card, so we plus one off of that.
mm.
So then if they swing at them, they're not swinging at us. We have a high life total. And then later on, we can finish them with our threats being both Sanji and Boa.
Yeah.
And then being able to stack our deck to consistently basically draw cards with our leader ability is really strong.
Yeah,
So,
I agree. Great. With that, let's jump into the goo of actually the deck list. And I want to say specifically with the deck list, we'll go over half the cards in here. There are a lot of options. And I remember, back in the day, we played like a lot of things like Love, Love, Mellow. And it's because we
hmm.
didn't have a lot of good access, especially to 2K counter 7 Warlords. All we had was
Hmm.
Mihawk. But now we have Crocodile, Trafalgar Law, and then obviously now we have Jinbei and Weevil as newer options.
Hmm.
And going from this, I do want to go over the defensive options of this deck, and it has just changed to be playing. You're playing a lot of 2K counters in this deck that are just also 7 Warlords, so they are recurable with this
Hmm.
Gecko Moria. And on top of that, I guess defensively, we're only playing this one blocker, but the 3 cost 4K blocker that scries is actually really powerful. Not a lot of decks get a good version of a 3 cost 4K blocker, right?
Hmm.
Um, and that's like my first thing I want to go over defensively. And then obviously there's a lot of disruption as far as things like Boa Hancock and Raging Tiger goes. But that's
Okay.
what I just want to talk about the defensive part of the decks, but with that, I mean, there are a couple of different versions part of the deck. I did want to go over this version. Why do we kind of prefer this Sanji Boa Hancock version?
Right, so this version's more for keeping up on tempo. So the two big finishers I've seen in
Mhm.
general has been 9-drop Sanji and then 10-drop Draw Kaido. They
Yeah.
both have their strengths, but the reason I like the Sanji version is because basically we get to keep up the tempo because we want to be a go first deck. We want to like try and go Prona first into ideally leader effect Jinbei,
Mhm.
into leader effect something else the next turn, swinging multiple sevens into Gravity Blade, and then on our 9 Dawn turn, Sanji into Boa. That's ideal pie in the sky, or Sanji into Jinbei into Weevil.
Yeah.
Something like that's our pie in the sky, like perfect curve. So that's why we're running the Sanji. Another thing is him being a big body that plays another body, ideally Boa, so you get 15 Dawn worth of cards for just 9. Is really good, especially in like all these like Red Purple Law, because Red Purple Law can't get rid of 2 big guys at one time. Lucci can get rid of both, but they need to use a lot more resources to get rid of both Boa and
tough.
Sanji. So it makes it so we will still have a board even after going through our opponent's removal. The Kaido version's more for to refill your hand, so it has like a similar aspect. It's not, but instead of putting board presence, it's refilling your hand. So you get to keep. So you get a big body on board. Hopefully they can't KO it or get rid of it in any way, and then you just overwhelm your opponent with a massive hand advantage.
Yeah, I will say a lot of opponents are able to play around the Kaido a lot better, and what I mean by that, it's not removing it, but drawing 4 cards isn't that great when your opponent has a gigantic ass board and they just swing at you, getting at least 4 cards out of your hand. And so it kind of didn't do a lot. It's kind of the same problem. I compare this card actually to 10 Mom a lot. Like, would you rather draw 4 cards, or would you rather gain a life and then lose a life? And so it's like, well, in that aspect, when you're playing against 10 Mom, you just kind of put them in a position where if they play this card, they're going to lose. And it's the same thing. You want to think the same thing when you're facing this. And that's why we're not recommending playing Kaido. But it's obviously a very great late game card where you could just Kaido back to back to back. It feels a lot like playing Katakuri in that aspect, right? Where you're, instead of gaining life and losing life, you're just drawing an insane amount of counter, right? Which, it can be pretty good, but at the same time, it's not versatile, which this is versatile, right? This is tempo. We need to put our opponents in the back foot. And I would say we're in a high roll meta, and it's one of those decks that, you kind of have to kind of see it a little bit in order to just kind of wash your opponent out of the game. I don't know how you felt about like maybe a high roll meta.
I feel like I understand what you're saying. I don't know if I would use the word high roll, but it's the decks aren't as consistent. They're more running more bricks. They're running more cards that just like you have to draw the right amount of pieces, and if you do draw the right pieces, your deck is basically unstoppable. So that I understand if that's what you mean by high roll meta.
Yeah.
But which case then I have to agree with you, because like if your deck doesn't see the right pieces, then it just doesn't do anything and then you lose. But if your opponent sees the right pieces, they can just keep going. So it's whoever can do the more broken stuff quickly is pretty much the name of the game right now.
Exactly. Yeah. I do want to give one thing, and this is I'm sure you've had this before. It's actually a frustrating thing with Sanji, right? You see a Sanji, but you don't see another card you can play off the top of the deck, or you don't see a Boa, right? And I like to say, if that kind of happens, I wouldn't say just give up, but you may have to like not play Sanji, right, on that turn.
Well,
and it's okay to like play Sanji and then get a Weevil off the top of the deck. Like, you don't need to look for the high roll.
Yeah, going Sanji into Weevil or Sanji into Gecko are really good, or Jinbei.
I've Sanji into Pudding before. Right?
Yeah, that could work.
Yeah. I mean, it's all good. I mean, you're basically just using your leader skill, right? When you think about it.
The other thing is, because Sanji's only 9 Dawn, at 10 Dawn, you can combo it with Perona to find the cards you want.
Yeah.
And if you're doing it on 9 Dawn, you can set up the turn before by playing a Doflamingo or Perona to know what you're going to be Sanjiing into.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
A lot of times you can basically pick what you're going to put into play. So that's why I ideally say we do Boa, but there's always different options depending on what's on the top. We're not always going to be able to do it into Boa.
Yeah. I did want to go over the leader skill before we jump into some optional cards and in the rest of the deck, right? The leader skill, obviously, it comes in rested, but how often are we really using the leader skill? I feel it's always going to be matchup dependent, right? And of course, I actually have a big problem playing down Perona in the early game, because it feels like a neg. and I'll give one big example here. I actually, even if I have a prone in hand, if I'm going first, I actually choose not to play it because I'll just blind swing the second turn because I actually want to save my Perona for a turn like on my 5 Dawn turn to start setting up my next plays, which is going to be Raging Tiger into Sanji whatever, right?
Well, the reason I would still do it turn 1 is because if we see another Perona, we can stack it to where we can draw that one. Same thing with Doflamingo, the blocker, because he also has that same effect. The other main reason is I want to guarantee my turn 2 if I'm going first to get a hit. That's not always going to be the case. Sometimes you'll look at the top 5 and there just won't be any hits, in which case you don't need to use the leader ability. You can go 5-5 if the top 5 is good enough and stack it up to where like you can do a play after that. But the main thing is on our 5 Dawn turn, when we do go first, a lot of times you might have like a Jinbei in hand and not have anything in our top of the deck. So we can just hard play Jinbei to play another guy from our hand.
Very commonly, that's the play, yeah.
Yes. That is usually the better play.
Especially going second, too. If you have a Jinbei into, most likely a Weevil, but really into Weevil or Moria. Is optimal.
Even a Law.
Or you can also Jinbei into a Doflamingo, right? Which is actually kind of, that's not great, but it feels good, right? As far as that
set
goes.
Up for your leader turn.
And then setting up for the Perona. Because generally, I mean, most of the decks you're going to be playing against, Raging Tiger right on 7 Dawn or 8 Dawn is going to be pretty powerful, especially against the meta decks currently going forward. So, but that sets you up to, if you have to Raging Tiger into Raging Tiger, it kind of sucks. But if you can Raging Tiger into Sanji and then back into whatever else, then that is ideal. So I feel like digging a little bit deeper is better.
I mean, even going Raging Tiger into Boa plus leader ability is very strong. It doesn't always have to be Sanji. It's just that is another option.
Yeah.
So our 9 Dawn turn can be very flexible because you can even go like Raging Tiger into like hard play Jinbei into leader effect, and then you get like you have multiple or a multitude of plays you can do when you get more Dawn. So just making sure that your early turns are as efficient and as strong as possible is why I would still play the Perona. But each play is their own. As long as you can find another one on your top, so you can reset again. Which is the main thing.
I will say, at least try it once or twice, because it feels like when you play a Perona, it's kind of an egg. Like it feels like an egg to me. Like
it is a -1. But the thing is, our leader ability +1s it back.
Yeah,
because we get a free card for
very often though. When I go first, I don't even see it. Right, it's kind of hard to see. So I'll either blind flip, or actually a better play is to play the 3-drop on the 3 Dawn turn. It actually sets you up really well, because on the 5 Dawn turn you actually may not even use leader skill. I'll just Jinbei Weevil, and the 7 Dawn turn Tiger. Then you can actually Sanji into something else if that works. Most of the time you don't even see the Sanji combo, but I'm just throwing it out there as an option, because at that point, then now you're just playing more Raging Tigers or using your leader skill. But definitely give that at least a thought, or like test this method of just blind swinging, because you'll actually kind of will hit something, and even if you don't hit something, you're kind of okay with it, right? But I want to give people a general idea too. It depends on what you're playing against most of the time. But definitely try to swing at your opponent's board so they're not able to kill your board, right? That is generally a good play. So then you're playing an extreme value game. If you're able to get to the 9 Dawn turn with like 2 more bodies than your opponent, then you're usually in a winning state. In general games,
it just depends on the matchup. Yeah.
Obviously, every matchup changes, but if we're playing good old Christian One Piece, then that's generally a good strategy.
Yeah, more bodies on board is usually equal a higher chance to win.
Is there any strategy you wanted to go over before we go over any like other optional cards?
No. The only thing is at 10+ Dawn, a play I found myself doing a lot is going Gecko Moria, adding back a Jinbei, playing another guy in hand. That's a really quick way to get a whole board of creatures.
Gross.
And then you can spiral it further. Like if you go like Jinbei into Gecko, add Jinbei into something else. That's another way to do it.
Double Jinbei, the same.
Yeah. It's a way to really do that whole get a big board out of nowhere. So Gecko Moria is in my opinion, found like a
Yeah.
lot of value there.
Realistically, I mean, there are games. It's the new high roll. If you just play Jinbei, your opponent just like cries. You know, it's kind of the new
Yeah,
like, dude.
it's really hard for them.
He saw 3 Ragers. Oh, he saw 3 Jinbeis. You know, it's the new it's the new bullshit. I suppose. So okay, yeah, nice little tech there. Especially these can pull these out, but people forget that this card you can just grab back. So
yep.
with that, I wanted to go over an optional card that some people were thinking about. I don't think it is very good in the current meta because there isn't actually a whole ton of blockers being used. I know Reputable Law has blockers, but a lot of time you're just removing them with Raging Tiger. But
yeah, that's what I was gonna say. I was gonna be like, I like Famor, but the problem is every blocker that you're trying to get by with Famor can just get Raging Tiger. So there's no point.
Yeah.
Well, there is a point. Don't get me wrong, but
Mhm.
like if you can just get rid of 2 bodies, it's better than normally than just playing this to get around the blockers.
Mhm.
Unless it's going specifically for game around like maybe like double Rebecca or Rebecca Sabo.
Yeah, which
That's probably
I
where it's
feel
like
like you've
really
probably
comes in.
lost by then. But
Well, I mean,
yeah.
depending on how much your life is, but most of the time, if you can just go Gravity Tiger, put 2 back, and then swing with your board, that's probably you're probably still in a winning spot, even though if you're trying to like push for game with for more.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, Femur is a niche card. I'll at least admit that. So great. Well, I don't really think there's any too many optional cards or any cards you can think of off the top of our head that maybe we should bring up.
I've seen lists with the 3-cost Doffy. I'm not a fan of it, but I do understand the thought process of it.
Yeah,
The new
it's too
3-cost
expensive.
Doffy.
It's too expensive. Right?
The reason I don't like it, 1, doesn't have counter. 2, on my 3-don turn, I'd almost rather go blind or just play a blocker Doffy.
Yeah.
But I understand the tech choices of it, so it can like you can do like a double turn of like filtering out the top cards.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you get like 2, 3 Dawn with your leader, 2 Dawn with this, and you get a bunch of you get like to clear the top of your deck so you can find better pieces. Another card I've seen is Sengoku. I personally like Sengoku because it finds all our warlords.
Yeah, it helps you
So we
find
can
the Doflamingo, right? So you can start doing
Yep.
top
It
searches.
also helps us find Jinbei, the card we've just been talking about all the time. We
Mhm.
can also find Boa as a top end piece. So I've been liking Sengoku. And then, obviously the big one, Red Rock.
Yeah.
Red Rock's another choice. People have that for Bonnie specifically because it gets rid of 8-drop Kid, it gets rid of Zoro. All these cards are very threatening to us if they get to stay on the board and if we aren't pressuring our opponent.
Yeah.
I
will say, in a way, Red Rock though, other than 8-drop Kid, Boa Hancock is basically, in my mind, kind of a Red Rock like card. Because there's times, someone play down a mirror happens sometimes, right? And they'll play down like a 10-drop Kaido and be like, okay, Boa Hancock, and they're like, well, that kind of sucks. Like,
yeah.
And what if I have another Boa Hancock? Like they're just stuck there forever. So it's kind of funny how this card actually can stun a big unit if your opponent just does that. But it's not perfect. But so Red Rock deals with like things like Kid, but it's definitely an option if you're facing a lot slower of a meta. So
yeah.
But.
And I think that's about. There might be another couple tech cards I'm missing.
Yeah, there's things like Duval, like another top checker blocker.
I've tried Duval.
But like it's kind of a small blocker. Why not play a Perona? We're trying to be a little bit more flexible here, even though the two cost is actually too relevant. Like the Dawn management early in the game needs to be good because I gotta tell you, this deck, the only thing it has going for it is tempo. Right? It's if you just take this deck by its surface and the cards, you're just playing a bunch of medium cards that do kind of okay.
We're just playing a mid-range deck. Yeah, you're just playing a mid-range deck that it can get outscaled, but if the good thing about mid-range decks is that it's usually slightly better than faster decks because you have better creatures. but slightly worse than late game decks because they have better creatures than yours, but you get to put on tempo against them.
Exactly. Yeah.
So just using the right time to use that tempo or gain more
Yeah,
tempo
yeah.
is low.
I will say the quality of cards isn't very good, but the quality of the tempo is great. That's
and then what we mean by tempo is like placing creatures on board that usually can't get removed unless it's through other means like Lucci or like a law effect. Because we could spam the board and then next turn swing 7 with like 5 characters, and that's either 10 cards gone from their hand or like 2 life and then 6 cards gone, something along that. So that swings the game in your favor. That's basically what I mean by tempo.
Yeah, that too, and just getting cards out before they can actually have enough Dawn or cards to remove your cards, right? Because Lucha can remove a whole lot of cards if it has 10 Dawn, but at 6 Dawn, it can't really do a whole lot, right?
Yeah, 6 Dawn, no stage, it's rough.
Yeah,
out there trying to get rid of everything.
Super rough. They had like double Ice Age Luchi. That's a high roll. You know, they have the high roll against it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's kind of a funny thought right there. With that, let's actually go into the mulligan. And, I mean, it does...